we did something called the Tampa Connect Fashion Week that I love sharing about this project because it was just an example of kind of like what comes out of the messy. We were doing unique like photo shoots to kind of tease out, for our social media promotion on the trolley, on the dash, on the ferry, you going on the bike, going on the bus, like doing these creative photo shoots and video shoots that all of a sudden, like the models are like, it's been my dream to do a photo shoot on the streetcar.
Welcome to Engaging Cities Fireside Chats. On each episode of the show, I talk to leaders who are paving the way in civic engagement in order to inspire listeners and share strategies that you can implement in your own community. This podcast is proudly supported by our sponsor, Conveo, the engagement platform for plans and policies. Check them out at konveo.com. I'm your host, Kelly Hickler, the Community Manager with Engaging Cities, as well as the founder of Cinovation Studio, which is dedicated to innovative civic education and engagement. Today, I'm chatting with Fatima Elkott, who is the founder of Conscious Community Connectors. And I just have to say that Fatima's energy is absolutely contagious. You can tell she is just spilling over with enthusiasm for the work she does. One of my favorite things we talk about is Tampa Connect Fashion Week, where Fatima used a teeny tiny $1,500 stipend to engage a diverse group of young artists through creative photo shoots on public transportation to explore transportation equity and mobility justice in a really unique, fun way. So let's tune into our convo. Hi, Fatima.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us on our Fireside Chats podcast. And I brought a fireside with me, as you can see.
Feel the warmth. It's very nice. Thank you.
So, as my listeners know, I like to always start out by asking my guests just to introduce themselves and talk about what kind of work they do specifically, tell us about your background and what got you into this line of work.
Yeah, well, just thank you for having me on this. I'm excited that Engaging Cities exists, and I just love the work that you've done with it so far with the fireside chats and kind of the posts and everything. So it's just an honor for me to be here with you, chit-chatting a little bit more about something that makes us both happy. But I think I found myself in this, as many urban planners do, just kind of falling into realizing that urban planning is a thing first and foremost, usually after our, undergraduate careers. So that I have, a very typical story and not knowing that it existed until somebody pointed me in the right direction and then having the opportunity to learn that it's literally everything. So that's how I fell into it. How I fell into community engagement specifically was my very first urban planning experience was a fellowship working with our local planning commission for Hillsborough County here in Florida. And I got to really firsthand experience all that urban planning is. We're going to the meetings and seeing the behind the scenes and going through plans and understanding how these processes work. And then I kind of was realizing through some of the community engagement that we were already doing with an update to our non-discrimination and equity plan that a lot of people care about urban planning, but they don't know how or that they even care about urban planning. They just care about something and they don't know that it's part of like an urban planning process. So I think that realization has just kind of been like an awakening moment for me, like back in, COVID days. And I've just been really passionate about bringing people who normally aren't considered urban planners into the conversation to be urban planners and practice, their inherent skills as urban planners. So that's why I'm here. And I ended up founding our own consultancy. It's called Conscious Community Connectors about a year and a half ago. After grad school, just because I had some experience working in public and private and nonprofits, and having my own firm has been a way for me to really have the autonomy to do true co-creation that I haven't really been able to do while working under another agency or institution. So this has given me kind of the best of both worlds of using my institutional knowledge and connections, but in a way where I can pay residents and do things that I think we should do, but we'll get into that a little bit.
Yes, definitely. And we were just chatting before I hit record. That's like the theme of today, but that'll be another episode. I don't know what sequence that episode will be released in, but there is another guest who I was just chatting to. We were talking about paying residents. So I'm excited to talk more about that idea. Do you want to talk a little bit more about conscious community connectors in general and the work that you're doing, or would you like to jump into maybe a specific success story that you've had?
Yeah, I think I can tie it into both. So I think with Conscious Community Connectors, we chose that name because I feel like it comes down to an issue of disconnection has been what our field specifically in urban planning has been dealing with historically. I mean, when you learn about our history, it is a story of disconnection in my perspective, and we still see it a lot, regardless of what sector you're in. I've seen it in nonprofits too, but especially in government and public works where your colleagues or people down the hall don't know projects that you're working on. And a lot of, repeated siloed behavior has led to this increase in distrust in our government institutions and in these agencies that are trying to do this work. So I kind of found myself like up against it over and over that I was like, okay. So it's like, first, the issue was people not knowing where or when community meetings are in general. I remember when I was going door knocking when I used to work for the county, and people were like, oh my God, it's the first time that somebody has come to my door and asked me what I thought about how, my access to these different things. And that alone was just such a big conversation starter in a time where it was COVID. BLM had just, really taken to the streets. Like it was a divisive time, the way we always think we're in a divisive time. So people were really against us going door to door. But I think that experience and really getting to talk to hundreds of different types of people and not finding one person who didn't care. And that was kind of the narrative that I was hearing from my colleagues in the public sector was like, you see, nobody shows up to these county meetings because they don't care. They don't care what happens to their park. They don't care what happens to their school. When in fact, from lived experience and just talking to people, I think it's the complete opposite. I think people deeply care. They deeply care how their kids get to school. They deeply care about the neighborhood park. They deeply care about their commute to work. All these different things affect their day-to-day lives. So that connection point was crucial. And then also that connection point between all the different pieces that make a holistic community that I think urban planners, I see us as like this really cool facilitator. You know what I mean? We're right at that intersection where yes, we have a lot of technical knowledge, but our job, the way I see it, is to bring in all the players to the table from the private sector, from the public sector, from agencies that are giving supportive services to programs, to the people and the kids and you know what I mean? Like anybody that's involved with it, bringing them together to really find that balance point is where I think is our art. And sometimes I think we get so stuck in like, okay, I'm creating this comprehensive plan. I'm doing this policy. I'm writing this long range transportation plan. And you're like, get so focused in the plan and the document, the non-living tool, that we kind of forget about the ecosystems that they all navigate within to make those plans, part of reality. And so that's where I like, and that connection point with small agencies and kind of like people and governments has been a fun surprise. And like how willing, when you get people to the room, I think like their preconception has been like people don't want to work together. And I think it's just been, we've lost each other somewhere along the way. And when we come together in an effective way where it's like, you have to have your structure, your agendas, your things to make sure that we're having a good meeting. But when you do that and you foster a true collaborative space, the sky's the limit. Like we can get so much more done. Money is used much more effectively. Projects have a much faster timeline. Like it just makes everybody happy. So I don't know. That's where we've been at. And I think just doing that work over and over and kind of proving that it works, to just take a little bit more time intentionally before doing these things to bring in many people to the table and really focus on connection as the root. I think would stop so many things. So that's really where we've been in. And I don't know if I should pause there before keeping going if you have any thoughts.
No, I love that backstory, and now I see the inspiration behind the name of the company for sure. And yes, that is I absolutely agree that building those relationships, those connections before we're asking people to get involved on a particular plan or project, it's so essential to already have those relationships established. And then you can just kind of bring, as plans or projects come about, you kind of bring them into the existing fold.
Exactly. Instead of the other way around, we usually like, I remember I was part of trying to get a community garden started back when I was still in grad school because somebody had a ton of land. That never happened. Usually that's, people come together first and they have to find the land. But this was the opposite where they had no land and they couldn't find anybody to do the community garden. And it wasn't successful because it was so much harder to have people buy into something that was already existing with its own kind of culture and rule versus having people come together first, creating, like you said, their own kind of fold, their own way of being and their own way of operating together as a unit, and then collectively deciding what is they want to do. You have that sense of ownership, which I think is what's going to be, your make or break it.
Yes, exactly. So, I would love to hear a success story that you have to share.
Yeah, I think on that point, like having that sense of ownership and we're going to be talking a lot about compensation, but I think having the funds in a way that is like in the nonprofit world unrestricted, you know what I mean? Having funds that are given to you in a trust base where you're allowed for emergence to occur, and things in community to go a little bit away from plan and to be a little bit creative and messy has been where we found the most success. And one of those is we did something called the Tampa Connect Fashion Week that I love sharing about this project because it was just an example of kind of like what comes out of the messy. And to start, I was just, doing some things on the side with some friends of mine who were some local creatives. We were doing just like some pop-up market hangouts where we were just coming together and just getting to know one another. And out of that poured naturally this group of young creatives from Tampa who were all, from the area, born and raised, different backgrounds, different races, different cultures. They were naturally organizing around like this creative connection, like finding each other. And something that came up was doing a fashion week that they all were talking about fashion and, how exclusive the fashion industry was and, kind of these things. And they're like, why don't we take it over? Like, what if we did our own fashion week? And at the time, I had just became a fellow with an organization called the National Organizations for Youth Safety or NOISE. That's all about transportation equity and mobility justice on a national level. And I had a small stipend. It was $1,500. It was not a lot of money, but I was like, okay, guys, this is what I have. If we can somehow make sure that we're looping in transportation equity into this, like I can use this as my project. And they're like, okay, we had all these ideas, things worked, things didn't work, people came on, they dropped off, you know what I mean? Like it was a project management hatful for sure. It was not an easy, coming together because it was a bunch of young creatives that had all different things happening in their life and different things were out there and different things were cool, and with kind of this cool facilitation exercise and herding the cats and bringing everybody together. But out of it, it came out this like beautiful organic project where out of all the different community engagement strategies I've ever seen and like managing volunteers, this was the first time in my entire life that I had more volunteers than I knew what to do with. Like 50 kids, like throughout the whole weekend. It was 3 days. Like I'm talking about volunteers that I'm trying to pick up a chair and I have two people like, where are you thinking a chair? I'll take it for you. In my life, have I ever had that before? I was like, okay. And like just seeing that ownership, like they were like, this is ours. Like we all had put in hours. We were all going in, like, you'll do this. Oh, that broke. No worries. You have the needle. We're going to make it happen. Like, and even though, we were young, when we were trying to get sponsored, they were like, what are y'all doing? You're a bunch of kids. We've heard that. Like, we went through a lot of obstacles, but when we got to that day, it was one of the most successful engagement events I've ever done. Like, it was just this conglomerate of people, and then the conversation naturally happened. Instead of me forcing them to talk about transportation equity, they came together and we were doing unique like photo shoots to kind of tease out, for our social media promotion on the trolley, on the dash, on the ferry, you going on the bike, going on the bus, like doing these creative photo shoots and video shoots that all of a sudden, like the models are like, it's been my dream to do a photo shoot on the streetcar. Not always wanted to do those. Are conversations started happening where some of the models were using public transit to come to like the casting calls, and we got to have a really frank conversation on what it was like, and like they were there earlier than everybody else. You know what I mean? Because they were still having to measure their transit time, and like it just naturally came about. And to this day, it's been almost a year later. They're still organizing. They're still going. They're going. We're going after proposals together and trying to spread awareness on how to make transportation, especially public transit, look attractive in an area where it's totally not our culture. We're very car dependent in Tampa. We have you know, I love them. They're really trying, but a really lackluster and kind of broken bus system. So it's not inherent for us, and have the young people come together really passionately to be like, no, we care about this, and we're going to use our influence. We're going to use our networks. We're going to use our creativity to make it part of our norm. Has just been my like favorite. I mean, obviously they
I can tell how passionate you are about it, and I don't think I've ever heard or seen of transportation equity being combined with fashion, a fashion week or fashion projects. What a ingenious idea. And before you said you were talking about the photo shoots on the public transit, I was like, how does this work together? But now I can imagine it. Is there something that you can direct listeners to online where they could see these photos?
we definitely have photo links. We have the Instagram as well. Tampa Connect Fashion Week is what it's called. And they're, a way to like make it beyond and really intersectional. Like we've been working with the Tampa City Ballet. They did like a cross collaboration with one of the designers and like took over the street like doing the crosswalk with these really cool like fashions and poses. And it just was so cool because it was the middle of the lunch day and downtown. Everybody's like, what's going on? What is it? And it was such a unique way to capture that attention and start that conversation that like I never would have thought I would be organizing a fashion week. I'm not a fashion girly. I didn't think that was gonna be me. But it turned out to be really effective. And I think it was because it was what they naturally wanted to do. They were already wanting to organize around it, that they had that interest. It really was theirs. They weren't doing it for a job. They were doing it, they actually wanted to. It, it showed. It really showed. It really did.
Yeah, I love that example. And I mean, now I'm thinking like what else could you do? What else could you make cool?
Yeah.
Combining it with some sort of fashion shoot or the ballet or dancers or musicians, just creative folks and what they can bring to the table to these topics, these city planning topics that that get to be made so dry sometimes. And they don't have to be dry. They can be fashionable. They can be
Exactly.
exciting.
Fun and attractive and like, oh my God, your local influencer is taking the bus and she's wearing whoever. Like now it's, a front page magazine topic and like it's sexy, it's part of culture. And that's what we need behind us if we are going to change the way that we navigate our cities and the way that we navigate our world. We need a cultural shift. That's always been part of the conversation. So like, why not involve the cultural makers? Those are who are going to be pivotal at shifting our narrative,
Absolutely. So, do you was there any kind of lessons learned? I know you said there was a lot of project management mishaps or learning opportunities
Mhm.
with that
Oh,
project. Do you want to talk through any of those on that project, or is there a different project that you think would be interesting to walk through kind of some things that didn't go as planned?
yeah, I think in public engagement overall, it's very interesting. I always say it's kind of like being a host at a restaurant. So we kind of get all the front of house, complaints. We're the first, we're the catch off or whatever is happening. And then we go to the back of house and we get all the back of house mishaps. We get to know what's going on with the kitchen or we lost the dishwasher today. Like, we have to see all of that in this world. So I think it always is a little messy. And I think it always is interesting because I was talking this out with a colleague. I think in engagement in general, or any engagement, doesn't have to be just in urban planning and event planning, all of this, when you're a very forward facing person, you are the instrument, you are the tool. So I think it's a big learning lesson overall has been how to take care of myself as the tool. Because when you get in there, it doesn't matter how much you're like, I am not the system that caused this pain, but I am the person that's receiving, the emotions associated with X, Y, or Z that did occur. And there has been a lot of harm that's been, inflicted on a lot of our marginalized communities, still being inflicted on a lot of them today. So that part has just been kind of like a maturation process for sure with me, as just being, an emotional person, an empathetic person. That's been something for me to navigate for sure. That going into this, anybody going into this, I would just really, really core on that being a number one rule, and to myself, really trying to be like, okay, how do I make sure to balance that with some sort of self care, some sort of, I would at least sometimes imagine myself when I come home, like taking it off, you know what I mean? And be like, okay, that was who I was in that community meeting. I'm going back home to a safe place where no one's mad at me. Not hard when you do care. So I think that just like anybody, and I know I talk to a lot of young people that love engagement and like come from a lot of these communities like myself, which is why we're passionate about this, because we're fighting for our people. But I think that's been a big thing. And then on top of that, a project we actually just finished up last week was in a very small community, a very small rural community here in Pillsbury County. It's called Waimama. It used to be mostly migrant workers. It used to be African American migrant workers, and now it's been Latino immigrant migrant workers from all over. But recently, it's going through like a lot of rural cities and all over. But in Florida, a really big development boom of just mass planned development on what used to be agricultural land. So it's going through a lot of really big changes. It's a community that myself and then one of the co-founders, he's from Waimama. So we have a lot of deep personal ties and roots there. And when we got our official project with Hillsborough County as our client, doing a park redevelopment study, something that we thought was going to be a really positive thing for the community is, hey, we're going to, we got money to invest into the park and make it, a library and bring all these really good assets to the community that's needed. That like stress was so prevalent in their lives of like our communities changing so fast. And so when they heard investment, they didn't hear opportunity, they heard gentrification, they heard displacement, they heard, that this is just another nail in our coffin to push us out and squeeze us out. And so that project was a big learning lesson for us because it was our first time really being at a municipal level with one of our projects. We're usually a lot smaller, a lot more grassroots, but also it was a pro and con of us having such deep relationships because some people that we've known for many years were really quick to be like, now you work for the government, so it doesn't matter our personal relationships, you are the problem. And like, that was really hard for us the first couple of months to navigate because they were our personal, especially for Jason. Jason, the people that he's grown up with his whole life. So that was a bad thing, but also because of those deep personal relationships, we had that trust already that I think that a lot of projects you don't have because you're usually as the consultant, the stranger, the outsider coming in. So that helped us because after we kind of went through our bumps on the road and getting all of that, we were able to really sit down with who we knew and we're like, hey, where did this start? Like, why is this narrative being spread? And it's a small rural town. So anything, good or bad is going to catch fire and spread really well. Their social capital is phenomenal. That's what I love about them. They're very united and very good, but that could sometimes lead to misconceptions being really skewed. And they were sharing amongst themselves that the plans were already decided, that this process was just, fluff, that they didn't actually care what the neighborhood wanted, that they were going to just make this for the new people, blah, 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 all these misconceptions where we have to do a lot of non-billable hours, a lot, to really like sit down and have these one-on-ones and go to like, the local market and just stand there and talk to people or go to door to door or go to the after school programs and like talk with the parents and like really kind of do this kind of like public relations kind of work of like, no, this is what it happened. And although, it was a lot of non-billable hours, that was a big thing. And that's, I think, something that I want to share because that's what it takes to do that. It's a lot of 2-hour phone calls. You know what I mean? Just listening to their histories of why they're thinking this way and breaking it down. So then you have those champions that are in the community that know the truth, know how to navigate the processes that are left up to them to navigate, and then share whatever they need, action items. Oh, that means y'all got to go to this, county commissioner meeting or whatever. They now have that, but it takes a lot of time to build that. So learning lesson on that is hopefully our clients can take that into consideration when we are asking for more of the budget. That's something that we're realizing, that if we want to do this the right way, then we can't do this for less than X amount, because it's going to take, this many hours
Right.
do plus some more.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel that a lot of agencies want some magic relationship building and trust building to happen in 1 week
Literally.
or 1 month or in 3 meetings or whatever spelled out in the RFP. And that's just really not possible most of the time if you don't already have those connections built. But like in this case, you had the network was there, the relationships were there. What was needed was reassuring people about the process and what was going to actually be done with the money, with the investments, and kind of combating the misinformation. So even when you have the relationships in place, it still is very time consuming.
It is. And I had a colleague I used to work with that she said you can't microwave, true engagement. And it's so true. I feel like, like, what do you want? Do you want the nourishing, 5-course meal, or do you want the TV dinner? If you're gonna want the TV dinner, that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get all the thicknesses that come with it. So the universe is something that's good for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that I like that analogy. If if your RFP has a TV dinner budget, well, then that's what you're gonna get. For the 5-course Michelin star experience, then you have to account for that in the budget.
Or even the fresh fruits and veggies at the very least, you know what I mean? Not to get fancy with it, but get yourself some nutrition, something of real food, real substantial value. It's worth it. And I just tell clients, or, in our RFPs, on different million ways you can do it. We can work with any type of budget. That's fine. But you're going to get a very different outcome depending on what your investment is, because part of our budget always goes towards paying residents, even if that means sacrificing and doing a lot more non-billable hours on our end, because I'm not going to sit through and talk to somebody for 2 hours and not be able to compensate them in some manner. Sometimes it's not a simple gift card. Sometimes it's volunteering with them in their local community garden that weekend because they needed an extra hand, or they just went through a storm on their property. So I'm going to, get my big guy friends to go help cut down some trees, because that's what they're doing, what you can in a different way, and kind of contributing back to that. And because it's an emotional labor, it's a time investment. It's a lot. And we treat residents, they're consultants as well. You know what I mean? You're literally asking them what to put in your plan, what to focus on, what should our priorities be. That's a consultant, just as much as we are. We're just the connectors. That's why I love that. Like, I'm the big builder, I'll connect you and but the work still needs to happen. That's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. So, one of my questions that I like to ask every guest is what one small change they would recommend for local governments or consultants to make. And it sounds like you're saying compensating residents for their time is that small change. But it doesn't have to be, if what I'm hearing is it doesn't have to be necessarily a monetary compensation, or it doesn't have to be a large amount. It can take other forms.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's just like that valuation of your lived experience always. Like, that's really what's going to trump anything. That's who's going to have to live with the consequences of whatever, does happen, that it has value to it. And if we really do want true engagement and really want, I love that co-creation is becoming the norm, but we got to be careful when words become the norm that they don't lose what they mean. Co-creation means to co-create something, which means you're there from the beginning, from before the RFP, ideally, which I know is like 10 cents that way when we're still convincing them here. But ideally, if that's really what we're talking about when we say those words, that's how we see it. So that's becomes kind of complicated for us when we're navigating these traditional RFPs because that's totally not, it's always, we have a lot of kind of unlearning and unteachings to do with our clients that I'm very grateful for our clients that we do have and hopefully any potential ones that understand that and are willing to kind of be a little bit honestly uncomfortable, right? Because change is going to be uncomfortable. It's not going to be as easy as your standard RFP where you're just checking off a box and keeping it pushing, but it is going to be a lot more effective. And to be honest, you're going to save yourself needing to do it again in another 5 to 10 years, which is usually the process that we do, and put another plan on the shelf. Like, what do you want? You know what I mean? If you actually want it to live, you need to breathe life into it. And life isn't, cheap. It's true, with the Pinocchio, you had to spend all my time and you really prepped. So what cost? But you have to put in, some sort of value to it, whatever that looks like. And we do a lot of grassroots work. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be compensation financially. If you have it, and that's, when you have to offer, all the better, duh, people need to pay their bill. But if there's other ways, like even for our artists, like I literally paid an artist one time $30, which for me was not like, it wasn't a lot of money. I felt so bad. I was apologizing to her. I was like, oh my gosh, I was out more. And she was just like, girl, thanks for giving that man. I've never gotten paid to make a flyer before. And she had like a broadcast channel on Instagram, was posting to everybody, was like, felt so proud of her flyer. And we had a lot more engagement like that alone. You know what I mean? It didn't take a lot, but it's just being like, hey, you're valued. Like, thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this, and offering, even if it's just a shout out, even if it's just a collab on social media.
Okay, yeah, those are great ideas. Um, I would love to hear from you about maybe some emerging trends or best practices that you are really excited about.
Yeah, I think like that arts and culture kind of perspective that we've been talking about, I've been really seeing it take kind of the lead in a lot of conversations around planning nationally and internationally lately. And that's been really comforting to see because I know that there have been a lot of leaders who have been pushing for that intersection for a while. But now that we've had those proof of concepts and are seeing that it is like a tangible strategy, I'm really excited to see how that'll turn. I think like placemaking and that whole phenomenon has really changed like the language around art and urban planning in general. But taking it a step further and like really, what does it look like to have creatives be our co-creators? What does it look like to have an artist be on your consultant team? What does it look like to have an influencer, pay them maybe a couple of $100s to just be part of your social media strategy and pushing out, what does that look like? And what is the metrics? And I think the metrics are high. We've seen just for TCFW that it was hitting some pretty high metrics in terms of visibility in the millions on Instagram just because of the partnerships and collaborations we were able to do on social media. But that wasn't, it's a tangible, impact that can have on a project that I'm really glad is finally getting kind of like that weight and legitimacy. And then something else that actually one of your previous guests, Corinne with Yep, I'm so excited to see youth engagement being taken seriously. That was something that I spent a lot of like my grad school and early planning years just being really passionate about because none of us knew urban planning existed as kids. I think I would have maybe chosen a different, undergrad career had I known. And actually, I volunteer a lot with some of their local schools and just depending on project that they do. And I was out of high school yesterday. And one of the students was someone that I had 3 years ago as part of one of our initiatives with our county government called FLIP, which is Future Leaders in Planning. And she was like, because of that, she's a senior now. She was, I think, a sophomore or freshman when I had her. And she was like, yeah, I'm like really excited because I'm gonna go into it straight in undergrad. Like she got an architecture. She has her SketchUp. She's done AutoCAD. I'm like, man, she's just ready to go. She's ready to hit the ground running in undergrad. She's making sure that she chooses a school that has a good urban planning undergraduate program. And she's like, I don't want to wait till I have a master's. I want to work in this now. This is what I want to do. And I'm so glad like I got that experience and got to work on these projects and got to learn about urban planning. And that made my day. And I'm glad we actually had this conversation today because that happened yesterday. And I needed to
Oh,
it went down. Cool. It's really, really cool. And it just makes such a difference to have that. And besides the child themselves and like person being exposed and diversifying a profession, that's, a big benefit of doing this. But also, I think from the engagement field, when we have children understand what urban planning processes are, their families come along with. And that's like, always been like we have missing middle housing, we have the missing middle, engaged person, where it's very hard to get working families to participate in this. But you can't. When you're a parent, you are on a schedule, you gotta be the right? You gotta be out, what are you gonna do? But when your fourth grader is all of a sudden coming back from an after school program and being like, yo, mom, I was just part of the complete street, design process. And what does that mean? Oh, it means, a place for us to be able to walk to and from school. You're always worried about me crossing the street because of the cars. Well, we're talking about a crosswalk, or we're talking about, you know what I mean? And now mama's like, oh my God, that's so good. How can I support? What can I do to make sure that happens? Or who do I talk to? And it does. I've seen it happen in real time, and especially with non-English speaking families, because I'm one of them. Your oldest is your translator, your lawyer, we're the ones who know what's going on, and we're kind of the communicators between our parents and the rest of the world. So having it in a way that a 10, 9, 8-year-old could understand, even a 6-year-old, how can you get it into a way that it's not that, plannerese and that technical, boring high, when it's fun and engaging and uses art and uses all these creative engagement opportunities. Now the conversation's different. Now it's fun. Now people want to talk about it. Now the high schoolers are talking about it. Now the influencers are talking about it. Your kids talking about it. It's on TV. Like now it's like you now, if you don't want to be alive, that's your choice, but it's not because you didn't know.
Exactly. Yeah. I always think, okay, my personal opinion, this might be controversial, or at least there's probably some people who won't agree. But I think every presentation should be at like the 6th grade level, 8th grade at most, but
Right.
really 6th grade level, because not that people are stupid. That's not what I'm saying. Is that if you can explain something at the 6th grade level to a 6th grader, well, then anyone is going to be able to understand that. And also, why shouldn't we be explaining it to a 6th grader?
That part. That part.
why why don't we include them
Yeah.
more? And to your point of that is a great way to get these working parents involved when the kid brings something home from school that they're excited about. Well, perfect.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you brought it up, because even, that child is just as part of our urban planning, world as anybody else. Kids are way more likely to use public transit and to walk and bike because they're kids. They're not driving. You know what I mean? Like they're our first voice riders, like, and how are we making it safe enough for our kids to be able to walk to school on their own? Because that is the reality of a lot of children. How do we make it safe? Would you trust your local city bus to take your 11-year-old home? And if not, then let's start that conversation on why. You know what I mean? Like, it should be a space where you do feel safe enough. It's a public space. It should be safe enough as well for the 11-year-old, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And I've been as listeners may know by now, I've been living in Germany for over a year now, and I am still surprised, not as much anymore, but I'm still surprised when I'm riding the train, whether it's the S-Bahn or the U-Bahn, the subway or the regional train, that there's young kids who are riding it by themselves or with their group of friends, and I'm like, "Wait, where's their parent? Where's the adult?" And I think, "Oh my gosh, are they lost? Are they okay?" And that's my reaction. No, they're just comfortable riding public transit by themselves, and the parents trust that it's safe and that they'll get where they need to go, and I'm like, "Oh, that's really cool." You don't see that in the US.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's a good indicator of a healthy, transportation system or a healthy city, is if your kids feel comfortable and safe enough getting around by themselves and the parents feel comfortable doing that. That's how a lot of other cities around the globe work. That's us and all of our histories and our things here in the US, but I think that that's a way to start thinking about the conversation a little bit differently, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so was there any other, I don't know, takeaways that you'd like to touch on or, uh, last thoughts about maybe, how you would go about measuring the success of your community engagement?
Yeah, I mean, from measuring the success on the point of it, I do think that social media analytics tell you a lot about what eyeballs are on your thing. And that's something that, again, just getting people the opportunity to hear about what's going on and to understand these things, it's a great tool. It is the fastest, it is the most efficient in reaching a broader amount of people from all different types of lived experiences. As almost anybody on any age has access, and if they don't, making sure that you catch them in other ways as well. That I think you've done, posting flyers up in public spaces, etc. But I think really harping on that and looking at who's looking at your thing online and in person is a good way to also know where your gaps are. So if you're realizing that a certain type of demographic is always showing up to your public meeting, is always, then what are the techniques that you're using to share that information? Maybe it is, if it's an email list, you know what I mean? Maybe you need to look at who your email list is going to and maybe diversifying the partners that you send those email lists to so that it's getting into the inbox of other people and doing something else besides email lists. You know what I mean? Like we have to be creative and understanding that people don't look at their emails the way, people in this technical world do. Like we all communicate via email because that's our form. And there's a lot of professions that don't communicate that way. There's a lot of people who don't. So I think that's a big thing. And measuring that, I think will just looking at that data and seeing if like a good gauge to where to start, I think would be a good way to use that. And then just being creative overall on how we're telling our stories. Like I think there's so many different types of technologies out there. Besides social media, there's Esri, GIS, doing story maps, doing this, and then also looking at the eyeballs on those products. How many people are engaging with those digital products that you're using? I think using that to your advantage and measuring that tangibly will tell you a lot more than a sign-in sheet to a community meeting. You know what I mean? Like if you're just looking at that as your metric, you're probably not looking at the full picture of your impact. And I think that's something to consider.
Exactly. Yeah, and another thing that I see sometimes is agencies will just, they'll post something on social media and think, "Okay, we covered it. We're good." Like we put it on Instagram or we put it on Nextdoor or whatever, and but people still aren't seeing it or engaging with it. And do you have any advice for how to deal with that situation?
And I hire a social media person. Whatever that looks like in your budget, you gotta do it because social media is a very complicated and useful tool, but you have to know how to navigate it. And on that of like highlighting youth engagement, get a young person to do it. Like, yes, there are people of all ages who know how to navigate social media, but you really want to get somebody that has grown up with it their whole life. They just know how to swim in it in a different way. I mean, even I'm in my late 20s and I've ate that. Like, I don't know. I'm in comparison, which is why I work with, fresh out of high school, 20 something, that's what they want to do. They're social media coordinators and engagement or they're influencers. That's their world. Pay the experts. So whatever that looks like, I'm not an expert in social media. You can hire my consulting firm that will find, what connects you to who is, but it's not going to be me, I'll do my own. That's enough. That's already enough of a headache for me to handle my own social media. You know what I mean? So pay who is the expert in whatever it is you're trying to do, and you will see tangible results. It's not the same when you do any other technical service. Would you pay anyone to do your plan that wasn't a transportation planner or urban planner? Probably not. You want to pay an accountant to do that. So why are you having, your poor overworked government staff also trying to become a social media influencer with your engagement? Not going to work. It's hard. You can't just post it in there and leave it. It needs to have strategy. It needs to have thought. And I know that's a lot for our government employees to handle. So I think it's sub it out or find a partnership with a local institution, whether it's, a high school or a college or university, and like be like, hey, do you have any marketing interns? Like use that. There's a lot of resources out there and places to do it. And even just collaborating with the local influencers that do exist. Like you'll don't underestimate an Instagram collab. Like that will just open up your eyeball to things. But some people may not want to do that for free, which is also understandable. You know?
Yeah. Yes. Well, Fatima, thank you so much for bringing your like I can feel your energy and your enthusiasm coming through the screen. So thank you for bringing that today. And where can people follow you or get in touch with you if they have questions or maybe they want to hire you and work with you?
Sure, I'm on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn girlie, so you can find me. Fatima is my first name and last name is Elkott. And then we do have our website, www.consciouscommunityconnectors.com. So you can go on there. All of our social media on there. We're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn as well, and we're on TikTok. So just check it out. We have a lot of really cool photographers and videographers and cool creative things that we've partnered with that are just fun to look through. So I'll give those links to you as well, Kelly, in case you want to share those, and in case anybody wants to see some cool fashion and some cool photography and videography. But other than that, I'm around. Reach out. I love connecting with people. I love, having 30-minute, or 45-minute Google Meet, with people and just getting to know more about our wonderful field and wonderful humans that exist in this wide world. So please reach out. I'm always happy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Of course, Kelly, thank you. This was fun.
All right, as always, thank you listeners for tuning in, and thanks again to our generous sponsor, Conveo. Head on over to engagingcities.org where you can find additional episodes and other helpful resources related to community engagement. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.